The character of our protagonist is this wizard named Caleb, and the moment he clicked to allocate 10 points into wisdom and start the game, the monitor flashed and everything disappeared. "Someone shake me, you criminal bastard, wake up to life." The protagonist is confused. What is this guy talking about? Wait, I was just at home playing, hold on. Did I lie down and fall asleep? He's laughing, having fun, thinking he's in a cool dream, while the guy tells him to stop annoying him on the ground. Then he walks away, saying, "Well, you're going to die like an idiot soon, so maybe madness is better." However, with his hand on his back, the protagonist is confused. This hurts like hell, considering it's a dream. And man, what is this crowd? And why is everything here so vivid? The mustache man then says, "Everyone here has already received their wands, and for those of you who committed crimes and became slaves, this labyrinth is your last chance to change your lives. If you survive and come out alive, you can escape slavery with the money you earn from the labyrinth. So give it your best, because it's the only chance to become students at the University of Magic." Our furry collared guy is scared. Hold on, Magic University? What's this labyrinth thing? And why do things here remind me a bit of that game? Before you can understand what's happening, they're already sending a group in, and we're inside the dungeon with the Fantastic Four. Looking around, it's obvious he has no idea what's going on. At least he knows his character is clearly the Caleb he created, and if this really is the labyrinth from that game, the creatures he'll encounter here are not easy to deal with. First, it would be good to take a look at the situation, understand his status and that of his friends, but looking back, the guy is all, "Everyone, don't worry, it's all right." The guy is in shock, screaming like crazy, saying they're all going to die. Caleb realizes he's clearly fallen in with a bunch of crazies. The guys are with their heads on the ground, hiding. He says, "Hey, guys, let's calm down for God's sake. For us to survive, right, we're going to have to find a way out." However, the chubby one has already run off desperately, asking for help, saying to get him out of there right now. Caleb, however, knows that the worst thing now is to draw the attention of the creatures around. But then, the sound of flesh being pierced, the chubby one turned into a pig on a spit. The goblin is there drooling with desire, while the other cries and raises his hands, saying everything happened exactly as he expected. The blonde elf is about to say something when the guy next to her takes a spear to the head. Man, the two wretches are there in the back staring, while she falls to the ground crying. Caleb notices that in a second, it's just the two of them, and the problem is that the goblins are coming their way. At this rate, he won't be able to handle it, and the creatures jump to strike him in the neck. The blade is about to hit his neck. He's sure he's going to die when it appears. The special hourglass ability, turn-based, activates. Time stops for 60 seconds for one turn, and he has 4 actions, automatically activating in emergencies. He's staring at this thing without understanding when the system says it's his turn, and time starts counting. Seeing the floating screen, he's not understanding what happened when suddenly he notices the goblins were frozen in midair. He's there. Wait, time stopped. What's this turn hourglass thing? The blonde isn't moving either, while Caleb notices that maybe this is his ability. Looking at where the blade stopped, he realizes the first thing he would have to do is raise the wand to block that attack that was going to hit his shoulder. Thinking about doing this, an action point is reduced. With only 3 left, he realizes it's going to be difficult to defend and shoot all at the same time. When he lets out a sigh, he wonders, right, if no one can move, why can he still sigh? He could still talk too. And the points, when he did this, didn't reduce. Then he remembers that in the game there was a screen with a sequence of actions and starts slowly coming up with a plan. He spends another action to move his body, another to defend while aiming at the goblin on the right, and then he reaches the last one, with 4 seconds left and all points used. He shouts, "Fireball." At the same time the hourglass ends, he manages to defend the goblin's attack with a collar while using the wand to aim at the one on the left and the one on the right, creating a barrage, taking both to the side. The elf is there, not understanding, while the corridor was evaporated. Caleb is in shock. It was close that he didn't die, but what the hell happened? He doesn't want to die like those guys, who left without doing anything. He's not sure why this activated, but clearly, things were the same as in the game, and at least, no one understands more about the warlock class than he does. The bad thing now is how long it will take for them to find the exit. He takes a look at the body there, while thinking that the most important thing is to find new companions. Then a glance to the side and the blonde is shocked. The plate questions what kind of talent she has, and she explains it's a lightning thing, but she's never used it. He thinks it's better than her having nothing. Then he says, well, even if you've never used it, you have no choice. If a monster comes at you, don't hesitate and throw that thing. She says, oh, okay, kind of not knowing how. Then he tells them to go look for the exit gate, while thinking he doesn't know if it was a developer or some kind of god who threw him into this mess. However, he guarantees he will survive this labyrinth. The next chapter says that a few years ago, the labyrinth appeared, along with the portals, and monsters were dropped on Earth. Because of this, countless adventurers and wizards died. To combat them, people started being trained, and throwing slaves into these labyrinths is one of the solutions. At least that's what Caleb knows about the story. He has no idea if this is true, so it's good for him to be careful. The traumatized blonde there, who always has this scared face, then introduces herself as Urinal. He responds that he's Caleb, walks away, while she stays there wanting to chat, saying that Caleb is suddenly calm and quiet. On the transport ride there, he talks a lot with everyone. This surprises him, meaning there was with him before he took this body, which is very dangerous because they might end up discovering he's not the same person anymore. Urinal then tells him she lived in the fairy forest, in what seemed like a mission shop, but it was a drug trafficking service. Unfortunately, they set her up, and without being able to pay for things, she became a slave. Caleb realizes she doesn't stop talking because she's scared, but soon turns, "Oh, Urinal, shut up, damn it." The poor thing got a fright, but actually, look at the little foot, she stepped on the trap. The hourglass activates, saying it's his turn, 59 seconds. He's thinking he stepped on the trap, but as far as I saw, it was her. At least he knows. He has to stay calm and keep an eye on the walls because that's usually where these traps come from. There's no kind of hole next to Urinal. He needed to look at his side too, so he spends an action point to turn his head. No hole either. Another action point to look at the ceiling and nothing. So, it can only be a floor trap. It must be those spikes that come up and give a painful stab in the foot. It could also be a nail bomb, which would be bad for both. They'd both be completely wrecked. My god, it could be a gas trap too, but what a damn beginner dungeon. And lastly, it could be the good old pitfall trap. However, he knows. When he looked down, he saw that Urinal was the one who activated it. This means that what will happen will affect both, and it can't be the spike in the foot. The problem is that there are 6 seconds, 3. He realizes he doesn't have much way to escape all this. Then he uses the last action point to move his foot to the trap's foot too. Then the turn ends. Urinal stumbles like an idiot, gets all twisted there, half fallen, and turns asking why he did that. Caleb then warns, Urinal, you stepped on the trap. Since it activates the moment I take my foot off, I stepped on it so it wouldn't activate. She's all twisted, but now what, right? Sorry, but what do we do? He asks if she remembers the orcs they killed and tells her to bring the little thing. She says okay and goes running. The goal was to put another type of object to hold the trap. Little girl, you're smart, huh? I'm liking my boy. 200 IQ comes strong. Or not, actually, because 30 minutes later, no sign of Urinal, and he wonders if she stepped on another trap or encountered some kind of monster. Really, it would have been better if he had been more selfish and just run forward and let her die alone. But in the middle of the drama, someone comes calling from the end of the corridor, and it's her bringing a big barrel, saying it was too heavy, that's why she took so long. Caleb thanks her and tells her to put it where he is now. He then pulls out the wand when he's a bit away from the barrel and decides it's better to activate that trap, to activate others nearby along with it. He moves the barrel, activating the explosion in the entire corridor, and with that, it's resolved. It was really the nail trap, and it went everywhere. Luckily, he managed to survive because of the hourglass. The place is dangerous, but he certainly has hopes. With the hourglass, he can always take the initiative. But first, he has to confirm if he can use this thing whenever he wants. Besides, he wants to make sure if he can cast spells using action points. Right at that moment, a little green foot appears in front. He says it's the perfect moment. One of the goblins is holding a bow, and he starts casting a fireball. Apparently, we're in the hourglass, because one action point is already gone. He's about to throw the fireball, while realizing that casting any kind of spell always costs an action point. Man, he spent 2 points, made 2 fireballs, the turn ended, and apparently 2, 3, 4, who knows how many. Poor goblin was shredded without being able to do anything. Isn't that something? Overpowered? The blonde is in shock while he realizes he can cast 4 fireballs before the enemies do anything. Urinal comments, Caleb, you're a cheater. You have the ultra-fast casting, no animation, no cast, no circle, nothing. While she's a poor thing who can barely use the useless thunder, he doesn't care, just walks away, while she continues whining, apologizing for being a filthy, useless. Caleb looks at her thinking, well, an elf shouldn't be choosing either warrior or mage. Then he questions, oh Urinal, how many meters can you jump? She stops to think and says that in the forest, at least 4 meters. Man, that's a big jump. He already knows that 4 meters is at least 5 agility points. He then takes that goblin bow that died and makes the perfect paper. A blonde elf with a bow, as classic as a dwarf with a hammer. She's there pulling the string, saying she's already shot a few in the forest and maybe she feels more comfortable like that. The greedy one takes a look at the waist and says that from now on, she stays in the background while he's going to keep her wand. In the end, the bastard has 4 wands stolen from everyone, but she's happy there. But then, the pointy-eared one hears something and immediately warns that someone is following them. The protagonist turns around and at the end of the corridor doesn't notice anything. He's going to say there's no one, but she says she guarantees she heard something coming from that direction. Then he remembers something from the game, tells her to close her eyes and count how many stones are in front of him. She's kind of not understanding, but says okay. And with that, she concentrates and says there are at least 3 stones a step away. At that moment, Caleb is sure she has the sound map ability just like in the game, allowing her to locate things only through sound. It's kind of obvious. At that moment, he asks then, how many people are coming? And she says 4, and they're running. Caleb already knows. Why are they running? It's not possible to know, but facing the whole team would be the worst thing, so it's them who are going to run too. They pass by the random pond and hide behind one of the pillars. The two are apprehensive, waiting while they hear the footsteps slowly approaching. When suddenly, Caleb jumps in front of everyone, pulls out the wand, and asks why they're following him. And the guy behind the shield already tells him to get out of the way and hand over the elf. Obviously, they're on top of the lake while they're telling him to do this. The guy points to the shield saying he received an item that isn't penetrated by any magic. Not even these arrows will do anything, so it's best he hands over this elf before they get into a fight and he ends up dying for her. They could even give the boy a chance to join the team and survive easily by the facial expression. What he wants is more than obvious, right guys? A glass of water. The guy is thirsty. Come on, let him craps there. Drink some water from the river. Poor Urinil is now in shock, thinking she's going to be sold. However, Caleb doesn't think it will be safer with these guys than with her. That's because, at least with Urinil, he can sleep in peace. Naughty. While with these bastards there, man, the risk is high. Oh, same story as surviving as a barbarian. Remember? Oh, that one also had a blonde, who is also well-nourished. These cave elves, apparently, come buffed. Caleb is telling him to leave if they don't want to die, and Urinil smiles, seeing that she won't be betrayed. But the guy asks if he's really joking. The protagonist warns that he's serious and they're the ones who will end up dying. The bald guy changes expression and says they're out of options and already tells his friend to kill. Oops, but hold your horses, man. The boy's hourglass activated. The clock stops, and the protagonist says he clearly wanted to give a chance. He may look like an idiot holding his two wands, but they're the ones who made the mistake of stopping in front of him. With the lightning puddle under their feet, he can first use a thunder spell. If it were another situation, only one person would be the target, but since there are three in this water, the situation changes and the first action point is spent. The lightning starts going, and at that moment, he already spends another, saying that the moment they're electrocuted, the shields will fall, and that's when each one will take the ball to the face. Another fireball cast, then one towards the bald guy. The last point is consumed. All his actions were used. His turn ended, and man, the poor guys blinked, and now there are two fireballs, a lightning bolt hitting everyone's boots. Who agonize, the guy spits, the weapons fall to the ground. Before they can do anything, the big ball is already coming, exploding underneath too, smoke rising. With that, he can't see another fireball, which is already coming through the middle of him too, hitting the middle of the face, exploding everyone. Ah, look at that genius protagonist. He raised the smoke because since she's an elf, even without seeing anything, she can aim and give a precise shot. Then he already tells her to keep up the barrage and take advantage of the smoke. His magic was still on cooldown, so he needs her to at least have taken one down. The bald guy took the fireball in the middle of the face, so at least he must have fallen. Time is passing, the guys are agonizing, and the cooldown is at 2 seconds. Wow, it's not that short, huh? He tells her to keep shooting arrows, but then she says everyone is already dead. The protagonist is like, but you only shot 2 arrows. How did 3 guys die, considering only one took a fireball? When the smoke clears, there's one with an arrow in the heart, and another she hit in the neck of one, went through and hit the middle of the throat of the other. Man, brutal girl, huh? Not only was she ruthless, but her aim is on point. The protagonist is in shock. It was a triple kill with 2 arrows and he compliments her, saying she really is an elf. Then the bald guy coughs there and wakes up, realizing he doesn't have a hand anymore. Caleb finds it funny that he's alive, while the bald guy wants to know what the hell he is. How can someone cast so many spells without any enchantment? Why would the kind of talent he has exist in a place like this? I have to agree with the bald guy. Not that he's right and a good person, but he says, this damn world is very unfair. Really, he ran into the wizard who stops time and casts 4 abilities at once. Oh, the protagonist says, unfair. Don't do this to me, you bastard. You are the one who came here to get involved in this situation. The bald guy, crying, however, says it's not like people choose to be there. He was exiled and enslaved because he didn't have any magical talent. If he had half the talent the boy has, he wouldn't have to live like this. Life was a drag and he died. The bald guy isn't worthy of pity, but he has a point. Really, things are unfair here, guys. Then the hot arrow elf apologizes, still saying she tried to kill everyone, but that one, right, still stayed half alive. Stopping to think, the only one who stayed alive was the one who took the fireball, right? Hers, no one moved. He, however, is more curious to know if it's really the first time she's killed someone like that in a fight. This girl, she has a crazy Looney Tunes look, and I'm starting to think she might be dangerous in other areas. So, my boy Caleb, you better be careful. She says yes, it's the first time she's shot someone with an arrow, and the main character says it's also the first time he's used magic with the intent to kill someone, but it was to survive. He calms down and says they're going to check what those guys were carrying, but at the same time, he's trying to understand why he's so calm after killing 4 people. If this were the real world, he'd be freaking out, but he's strangely calm. At that moment, when the goblins came to attack, he was sure he was going to die and was much more scared. Somehow, In this short period, he's already mentally stronger. The undeniable thing was that the mix of burning flesh with the smell of blood was terrible. He's there observing with the back of his hand when Urinal brings a backpack and says they seem to have quite a bit of stuff. Looking inside, there's a little book, a pan, what looks like bread, a knife, rope, and even a letter from a human named Abyssine, a master of the labyrinth, or a woman, who knows. What they're sure of is that it's not anyone they faced. It's some other player who was abandoned and killed in this place. It's becoming clearer to him that dying in this labyrinth is easier than it seems. Not to mention that even those guys' groups seem strangely organized. They had a good distribution, with the tank in front, the mage in the back, and if it weren't for Caleb's skills, there would be no way he could win. If the situation had been reversed, he wouldn't have been able to defeat these people. He would have died the same way. If it weren't for the hourglass, he'd already be dead, that's for sure. And relying solely on this power and luck is not how he wants to live the rest of his life. Wow, the boy's evolution is pretty fast, right? I thought he would just keep abusing the hourglass, which he probably will, but at least he's trying to become a bit more independent. He tells Urinal that it's time for them to come, knowing he needs an infallible strategy, the kind that doesn't depend on skills or any variable. After all, his life is the most valuable thing he possesses, and he's noticing that, clearly. This game doesn't seem like something he's going to wake up from. If this is his new reality, he has to do everything to survive. Elf, panting, we continue down the endless corridor. Wow, really endless. They've been traveling continuously for 12 hours. They face several goblins, so it's natural that she's tired. The second he offers to take a break, she immediately gets all excited and asks if they can finally stop for a bit. She lights a campfire, sits on the ground, and grabs a little piece of bread. Urinal calls out to Caleb and thanks him for saving her twice today. He responds that it was nothing much. She also worked hard. She replies that she knows, but he, for example, could have accepted those guys' offer, and it would have been easier. He gives a little swag smile and says, I would never abandon a reliable companion like you. She gets all emotional, but he already lies down, saying goodbye, mentioning that he's going to rest first. At that moment, the system says he has entered a resting state and leveled up to level 3. He's obviously a bit confused, right? Wait a minute, you only level up in this game when you sleep? With that, he can distribute 2 more points. He has 10 plus 2 at this moment, because of the equipment he's been receiving and the first points he spent. He remembers that in the game, with 13 wisdom, you can explode a goblin's shield, so he raises it to 12, with 2 more, making it 14. Besides, he could also take a look at Urinal's stats, who seems to have leveled up to level 3. He opens her profile and sees that she already has 8 agility. He can also check that she has the sound map, right, to be able to see without needing to see, just by sound. The protagonist then stands up, saying, well, as expected, I didn't return to reality. She's standing there all crooked, and he tells her she can go to sleep now. She throws herself down, thanking him while he puts the shield against the wall, and she asks what he's going to do now. He explains that it's just a small check. He pulls out the wand, fireball, shield explodes. Indeed, the power had increased, and the reality is that this doesn't seem to be a dream. Urinal says she's impressed that he exploded the shield but falls asleep. A long time passes, the campfire goes out, and they're back in the corridors. She wants to know how long it's going to take for them to find the exit. Unfortunately, they're finding several paths with 3 ways, which means it's now a matter of luck, but he's an unlucky person. The scene, however, advances a bit more, and he's scared. That's because it seems like they've found the exit, and there's a group of people in front. At that moment, he hesitates a bit and tells Urinal to stay back. Those guys had some pretty good equipment and seemed like a more experienced group. Suddenly, the dwarf turns, hey you there, what is it? The dwarf, hello, when was the slave team placed in the labyrinth? She says, yesterday at 10, and he scratches his beard. So a day and a half. They survived very well, even reached the exit quickly. Impressive. The elf has already realized she's useless with magic and picked up a bow. The poor thing gets startled, and he continues. The human, on the other hand, is holding 2 wands. You seem overly confident in your magic. Caleb says yes. The dwarf says he likes that answer. Humility is insignificant. By any chance, boy, do you have a fireball wand? The protagonist answers once again that yes, and the dwarf asks a certain Zickle what they're going to do. The furry responds, I don't know, we can't stay here for long. Emma, well, if he seems that confident, let's recruit him. However, the dwarf says it's too much confidence. In the end, he's just a slave and a mage. We're going to end up disappointed with someone here. Zickle agrees and says, okay, and who are we going to choose? There's no other option. Considering Abyssine's level, we're going to end up disappointed. Upon hearing that name, Caleb remembers that the player card he found belonged to this person. He then asks, by any chance, did you lose a comrade of yours who was a mage? The dwarf says yes. We lost him to a black wasp on the first floor. He was a friend I liked a lot, even though the decisions were questionable in that fight, and now he's dead. Emma tells him to be quiet. She had used her preservation power, so he's not dead. He could be revived if they brought a resurrection scroll. They're there discussing, talking, while Caleb observes. At least now he's sure. On the other side of that door is the exit he so desperately needs to pass through, but apparently, a mage is necessary. Probably not the undead, since they have a priest and would have done it because it would be easy. Any kind of troll, salamander, goat, more normal creatures would be fine with this combination they have. The only situation that would require a mage is some kind of flying boss. But if that were the case, they would be interested in Urnal, who uses the bow. There's only one type of boss that they necessarily need a mage and one with a fireball. And with that, he asks, by any chance, is the boss behind this door a venomous spider? I like it when our protagonist uses logic to figure things out, right? All Albert Einstein, the boy, and the trio is there in shock, wanting to know how he knows that. The dwarf tells him to answer how he knows and what he knows about the labyrinth, to which Caleb responds that he knows a little. He knows that this venomous spider is a boss with deadly venom. Obviously, it does spider things, it shoots webs and traps its targets. The problem is that it's extremely fast. Usually, the doors are already closed, and when you're caught by the web, everything gets stuck. It's almost inevitable that a group that gets caught ends up dying. The only way to counter this boss is with good old fire magic. By setting the ceiling on fire, you can basically eliminate a good portion of all its webs. That's the basic strategy needed, and the protagonist says, to defeat this boss, you need me. Emma shouts that she agrees, and Zekel too, saying that, well, it seems the boy understood quickly, so he's the way. The dwarf's eyes sparkle. He says, all right, the two would temporarily be part of their group. However, Caleb says, no, and then they're like, huh, what do you mean? Confused, Urnal says, huh, Caleb, why are you refusing? We need to get out of here. He then explains, this seems like a good opportunity to kill the boss, especially since, you know, we're finally going to be able to get out of this place. But there's something very important they didn't tell us. The number of people who can pass through this gate is 4. Urnal's expression has already changed, and he says, the gate is very unstable at the moment, and only one person can pass at a time. And when one passes, the portal's destruction process accelerates. It goes from blue to green to yellow and red and disappears. In the end, the limit is 4 people. There's only one spot in that group, and he's the necessary piece in this situation. In other words, what these guys are asking is for her to be abandoned. The dwarf isn't surprised and says, it's a surprise that you noticed even that. Huh, Caleb, I didn't want to hide it, so I apologize. I confess it would be perfect if we could take both of you, but what we need is a mage. So, I want to give you one last chance to return alive. It's just Caleb helping them and the elf girl leaving. At that moment, Urnal is there trembling, thinking she's going to be abandoned now. However, if there's one thing I've learned in this life, it's that a protagonist never abandons an elf. Caleb thinks, this offer is so good, it makes me think it might be a good solution. But even if I manage to escape this place, if I don't get out of slavery, I'll be thrown into the labyrinth again. The most important thing is, will these guys form a group with me when we get out of here? Obviously not. Considering how much more advanced they are, I'll just be abandoned and thrown into a group of slaves and tossed here in the end. Not to mention that maybe I won't have the luck to fall with someone as skilled as Urnal. And with that, he says, Urnal, I'm sorry to tell them, but I'm not going to abandon you. Everyone is shocked, obviously, even Urnal, ears drooping, is there not understanding. And with that, he says that, actually, he wants to make a suggestion to them. How about hiring us? The dwarf is a bit confused, right? Hiring? Wait a minute, what are you talking about? You don't want to compete for the gate and instead want a payment. Tell us how much you're asking for. Caleb says he wants 10,000 gold. Apparently, it's a lot because Urnal is in shock. However, he knows very well the value of things. Everything they've collected in this last day in the labyrinth will total about 2,000 gold. Adding the value of the two, he believes that he and Urnal together are worth about 6,000. And observing these guys' group, he sees that they've hired a priestess who is extremely expensive. In other words, they not only have enough money but must have farmed a lot. They must be wanting to escape, especially considering they can resurrect their friend Abyssin. That's because the soul preservation magic doesn't last forever, so they must be in a hurry. Zekel, in the background, then says, there's not much to do, right? There's no other mage, so it'll have to be this kid. Caleb, however, only wants to accept if the priestess makes an oath in terms of a contract. Emma responds that it's okay, she'll make the unbreakable pact. However, the dwarf is offering 9,000. The protagonist raises it to 9,500, 9,300, 9,500. Poor dwarf says it's impossible. How is he going to lay his head on the pillow, having paid 9,500 for the slave mage? The protagonist, however, says he won't regret it, while the dwarf is there knowing he's sure he'll regret it. Emma tells him to stop being stubborn because they need to get out of there soon. Everyone in front of the door, and Emma starts making the pact. Along with the dwarf Bertanen, Zekel, and her, they hire Caleb's group, Urnal, for 9,500. The condition to complete this is that Bertanen's group manages to cross the gate, and if any group dies, the contract is invalidated. The two make the oath, and with that, the door opens. It was time to enter the lair. We're already inside. Web on the ceiling, and Caleb notices the place is darker than he imagined. From the corner, he notices one of the neutral objects in this place, which were explosive barrels, and Bertanen is telling them to be careful with the web accumulations on the ground. Besides, before the boss starts attacking them, Caleb is supposed to start burning this web. The dwarf is telling him to do that when suddenly there's a web strike coming over his head, almost hitting his face, but he gives it a chop and manages to redirect it. He tells the damn Caleb to throw a fireball up and burn everything. Looking at the ceiling, the protagonist sees the boss messing with everyone. Even though the boss attacked first, now he's exposed. He knows he won't have many chances. So while this monster is attacking, he has to cause as much damage as possible. With that, the good old hourglass activates. Fireball, 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 and fireball. Wow, 4 casts rolling. All points are reset, and here come 3 fireballs surrounding the boss in the sky. The poor spider, right, has nowhere to run. The explosion happens up there. The guy's group is a bit confused, wanting to know, wait a minute, is it just me? Or were there no enchantments and 4 fireballs appear out of nowhere? Caleb, however, tells them to wake up to life and focus because the chance has arrived. With the experience he has about this boss, they can't miss the chance to cause as much damage as possible at the beginning. He calls for Urinal, who shoots an arrow. 2. While the boss is falling. 3, 4, 5. My god, she sent the sequence. 3 hit the carapace. With that, he tells him to wait a second while he realizes that her goblin bow is useless against this boss. The monster falls to the ground, spewing fire everywhere. He immediately asks for a shield spell from Emma, who says it's okay, and tells Zekal to go for it the second the spider starts moving. The guy is angry, telling the damn beginner not to boss him around. But right then, the spider gets up, and he ends up obeying and goes for it. The monster comes to give him 2 claw strikes. He faces it, activates an ambush jump, and cuts off 2 front legs. The creature agonizes, falls with its butt facing everyone. Bertanen says is going to explode and already tells Emma to obey the boy. Consolation shield raised, and Caleb realizes that at least the dwarf knows the patterns of this creature. The problem is that the most important thing in this place is finding a way to stop the venom explosion. With that, he pulls out another wand and uses a piercing ice attack, which goes straight to her belly, starting a freeze. He then tells Emma to remove the shield and for Bertanen to go for it. They're a bit confused, but he shouts, telling the damn dwarf to start causing some damage. Bertanen wants to argue, saying this is the moment to use the shield, but the protagonist tells him to go for it and start obeying, for God's sake. While thinking that in the game it's so much easier, the damn characters obey, it's just a click. Bertanen finally goes, saying he doesn't understand why this boy wants to command something, but okay. He gives that jump, we're in midair. He comes with that precise vertical cut on the creature's head, smoke everywhere, axe bathed in venom, and everyone celebrating. Meanwhile, Caleb is there a bit hesitant. Apparently, these guys don't even know that when the venomous spider dies, there's a chance to activate the second phase. The people, however, are all there, commenting on the victory. For a first-floor boss, it was easier than they imagined. Urinal, however, asked, Airhead, why are you standing there with that wand to the ceiling? Are you crazy? He, however, tells her to look up, and when she turns, her expression changes. The friends want to know what they're shouting about, and with that, everyone's expression changes too. There was an infinite expanse of eggs on the ceiling. Everyone in shock. Emma says, no one warned there would be a phase 2. Bertanen is scared and says it's the first time he's going through this too. With that, the protagonist calls for Urinal and tells her to roll that barrel. She goes to the cute corner and throws it to him. The protagonist already tells Bertanen to throw it up. He was a bit confused, but Caleb just tells him to obey. He already tells Emma to put a light weapon on Urinal's arrow. Apparently, everyone is obeying, and she already casts the spell, and Urinal pulls the arrow, shoots it towards the ceiling, hitting the middle of the egg expanse. At that moment, Bertanen says he can now see perfectly and throws the barrel up too. When the barrel reaches the highest point, Caleb activates the hourglass, fireball, and apparently, it's going to be another one of those sequences. That's right, 4 towards the ceiling. Everything explodes in the cave once again, and now the team is a bit confused. Wait a minute, silent casting, with high-speed activation, with 4 spells at the same time. This is strangely easy. Bertanen is already thinking, this kid has something strange, he's a slave, but that talent is completely out of the ordinary. Where did this kid come from? And with that, the portal opens. Caleb is exhausted, saying, phew, it's finally over. He thinks, honestly, it's so much easier when you have an experienced team. It's just a bit frustrating because, unlike in a game, I control very few things. Suddenly, Zekal makes a grim face and demands the kid to reveal who he really is. All intrigued, he wants to know who this boy is that managed to conjure so many things at once. He's an incredible kid. The protagonist says it was nothing special, but they insist, saying they owe him one. Bertanen confesses, man, I'm impressed. This isn't the kind of skill a slave should have. What were you doing in this world before ending up here? Caleb remembers he was just a nerd, man, playing games all day. And with that, he says he never was more than a slave, nothing special. The dwarf responds, well, I get it right. Not everyone wants to reveal their own story. Urinal then comments that she never imagined they would win without taking any damage. Bertanen agrees, saying he only accepted the proposal because he thought the 2 of them would die quickly. To which Caleb responds that it was precisely because he imagined they would think that he set that price. The dwarf says he's smart, but this isn't over yet. Caleb agrees, and Zekal finds it strange, right? What else needs to happen? The gate is right in front of everyone. The protagonist explains, we need to finalize this contract in the village. Emma says, well, yeah, it's a strange situation since the contract says we have to pass through the portal for this to be completed. Until then, it's kind of incomplete. Urinal finds this a bit unfair, saying, what? The gate's right there, isn't it just a matter of crossing and that's it? Emma, however, explains that unfortunately, any contract made for the goddess of justice has to be completed exactly as written. In other words, Urinal and Caleb needed to pass through the gate. Ah, now I understand the little contract he made. I'm a bit confused. Right, let's see what will happen. Urinal wants to know, right, and what if they can't pass? To which Emma responds that then the contract will be considered failed, and the entire team might be killed, and the contract deemed void. She's a bit stunned, while Caleb thinks he already imagined that no one brings 10,000 gold to a dungeon. The rule was made in a way to screw anyone who can't get out alive. And a friend asks, right, Caleb, did you know about these rules? He says yes. Every contract is only completed when you leave the dungeon. Zekal then claps his hands and says, that explains why that stingy Bertanen accepted such a deal. But then he says, hey kid, you're too talented to die here just like that. You better get out of this place alive and rob everything that dwarf has. Ah, it seems they're going to leave before them, but the protagonist and Urinil need to leave together, right? So they might have to find another way out. I think that's it. And before they leave, our protagonist goes to the back and says that this backpack belonged to their companion. At that moment, Bertanen is startled and runs, wanting to know if he's talking about Abyssin. He grabs and questions, right, where's his body? The protagonist says he didn't see the body. They got this after fighting another group. The people now understand what happened and think it's quite a coincidence. Bertanen immediately says, I'm sure you're wanting something to be returning this backpack to me. And Caleb says all he wants is the backpack itself. They can keep any item from the guy who died. The dwarf finds it odd, that was too little. But if that's the case, it's all right. They'll take Abyssin's things and give them some food. Caleb questions if they're going back to the labyrinth soon, and they say not for now. They really need to leave, go to the city, and buy another scroll. They had already brought another scroll, but Abyssin had already died and been resurrected. Caleb thinks this guy there could give up going to the dungeons, right? It's just causing trouble. Then Bertanen says that, anyway, Caleb was a million times better than Abyssin. They should have recruited him from the start. Ah, while they're praising Caleb, poor Urinal is all ears down, sad, feeling she wasn't much help. Here she comes with the drama. Why don't you take Caleb with you? Everyone is shocked because, in theory, I think that means she would die, right? The protagonist is a bit confused, and she explains, if one person arrives with you at the village, it already counts. That way, no team will be deleted, and with that, all of you will get out alive. Caleb keeps 9,500, becomes a free citizen, and joins your group. Emma, however, asks the obvious, right, what will she do? It must be hard enough surviving alongside Caleb. Imagine if she's alone, she won't last a day there, because she responds that she doesn't even think they'll manage to find the exit again. At the pace things are going, they'll die anyway there. That's why she asks Caleb, please, not to think about her and just leave. She would have died a long time ago and will never forget. Actually, she will. You will die and won't remember anything. My dear, the world is cruel. Bertanen, a bit embarrassed, tells the elf she has to understand that recruiting people from another team inside a dungeon is considered a bit rude. I'm a bit confused with this damn dwarf. He says this as if he doesn't want to, but then he turns and tells the protagonist he wants to recruit him as an official member. Ah, no, wait, if Caleb accepts, he will officially hire both to receive 25% of the profits, plus the 9,500. I just want to understand how everyone will get out of there. Even the protagonist is thinking this offer is strangely generous. Then Urinal tells him it's okay, she'll manage to survive. He can't die there just because of her. When she says she wants to end this with a smile, a new mission comes up. Hourglass expansion opportunity. If you stay by Urinal's side now, her trust will reach 100%, as if he would leave the droopy ears, right, man? Oh, and the system explains that when he's above 80%, right, a person's trust, he can give commands to that person on his turn. And after the turn ends, the person kind of, right, goes back to controlling themselves. So basically, he can kind of organize everyone there at the same time. Then he realizes it's just like a game. You evolve and unlock new abilities. And obviously, this thing of being able to give commands to team members is super overpowered, especially considering Urinal would obey everything. What are you thinking, man? Okay, he concludes it wouldn't work with extreme things, like, for example, don't breathe for 2 hours. Probably, he can only indicate basic things, like aim here, shoot that target, or jump back. Probably, this would also cost an action point, but, on the other hand, he could control much more in the middle of the fight. Bertanen then tells him to answer quickly, right? What will he choose? The protagonist is there wanting to think more, so he activates the hourglass to think, wondering which of the two choices would yield a better result. He doesn't know what this will cause in his future, so he has to be careful. In one of the options, he has the hourglass and an archer. In the other, he can instantly escape the dungeon and join a group of veterans. To be honest, I think the best option is Urinal, even though I also think he'll end up paying a high price. He does the obvious, right? He pulls her arm and says he appreciates the offer, but the answer is the same. He wants to escape this dungeon with her, so they can cross now, without them, as planned. This elf, with that Looney Tunes face, doesn't fool me. Something's wrong. However, right, the guy's team is shocked, asking if he's serious. Caleb says yes, he's dead serious, while thinking that even though this is a risky option, it's the best decision, and the one he would make if it were a game. In the long run, evolving Urinal more would yield more profit, not to mention he can't be so cold as to just abandon her there. She keeps asking, wanting to know why he won't go, while he's just thinking it would be too hard to live with the guilt of it. Suddenly, Zico calls. He does the same again, right? Calls with an angry face and then gets emotional, saying Caleb is the coolest guy he's ever met. Among amateurs, among beginners, he's incredible. No one understands anything, and Bertanen says he wants Caleb even more now. Emma says she doesn't want to break the emotional connection there, but how does he plan to deal with the boss of the next gate? To which the protagonist responds with a question, wanting to know if he can take the spider's corpse with him. At that moment, the dwarf changes his mind, saying, no way. Sentiment is one thing, money is another. Caleb says he wants to buy it and reduce 1,500 from the debt of 9,500. Then Bertanen asks if her name is pretty new. She realizes the jerk doesn't even know her name until now. I compliment her, right, saying she's a very sincere girl and she's willing to sacrifice herself for Caleb, and that was cooler than the quadruple fireball conjuration, and that's why he hopes the two of them come back alive. With that, he hands over some potions and says it's a little gift for them, so they can survive. Zickle apologizes, saying he has nothing to give, right, but when they get out of there, they'll drink something together, and Emma says that as soon as they get out, they should go to Nathaniel's temple and look for Priestess Emma. She'll be there waiting with their reward. She conjures a blessing from Nathaniel and says she'll ask God to ensure their lives. The protagonist knows this blessing is good, it uses a lot of mana, but it increases all stats by 1 for 12 hours, plus immunity to some decay curses. However, finally, the time has come, and they are face to face with the portal, waving goodbye, telling them to remember them. 2 pass, and the portal turns yellow. Bertanen pulls out a mana stone, which in dungeons makes the portals appear again, faster, so it's like, kind of you being nice. Now the thing is already red, and he says that when they pass, they should go to the Adventurers Guild and look for him, right? Bertanen, a name they shouldn't forget. The portal closes, and Urinal falls to the ground, still asking, right, why did he do that? How are the two of them, alone, going to face the next boss? Even though he was prepared, he notes that for her, it was still too much. But she doesn't have to worry because his body has been marinated in years of addiction to this game, and he's already calculated everything about how they're going to get out of there. Then he tells her to stop crying and start tearing off the spider's legs. Finally, her trust reaches 100%. And now he can give direct commands. The sound of skin tearing echoes through the corridors, and Urinal says she's not saying this because she doesn't want to work. But like, right? She's willing to even kill herself for him. But why doesn't he help? And only she's collecting these things from this creature. Caleb says, trust me, keep tearing, I have my reasons. He doesn't want to explain, but the truth is that because she has more dexterity than him, the chances of things going right when she does it are higher. Not to mention he's still wanting to study this expansion ability. He has to start planning future fights considering this, and at the end of the ability, it now says, difficult actions or commands against her nature will not be executed. He doesn't know if he can. For example, order her to kick friends, doesn't know if he can order her to spin around, throwing flashes everywhere. He needs to quickly discover what limits he can place on her, who at this moment is all happy, saying she finally pulled out all the teeth. The protagonist says, perfect. Now they just need to start making some poisoned arrows. She's all happy, saying she didn't know she had such a talent for pulling teeth. While the guy is smitten, my friend, he says a second ago she was crying, but now, seeing her smile, that's how he prefers it. Ah, just declare yourself already, man. It's chapter 7, and the guy is already wanting to propose. Then he explains to combine the goblin's arrow with the poisonous tooth to create, right? Poisonous arrows. Urinal says she understands the logic, but like, she won't be able to help much in the fight, right? So, what's the point? He explains that she doesn't understand. The reason she's not able to help much is because her bow is very bad. For her class, the item and arrow you use are the most important things. Since they won't be able to get a good bow in this dungeon, they'll have to have better arrows. By combining the necessary materials, they can make this special arrow, and with a dangerous poison like this, even a mediocre bow becomes lethal. The annoying part is that it's kind of a gamble to successfully build this type of item. It's a combination that can go wrong. But suddenly, she already asks if it's to combine like this. He turns kind of, how did you do that? She says, well, I pressed the arrow at the back, and it worked. He thinks she has a strange proficiency for making items, but perfect. Now that she has the poison arrow, all she has to do is save it for when he orders, and it's time to get back to walking through the labyrinth. With that, we're walking through the corridors when he decides to test the hourglass expansion. He activates the ability, 60 seconds as always, and the 4 action points appear. He orders Urinal to give him a water bottle from the backpack, but strangely, he doesn't lose any action points. Then he realizes that maybe it's because it's not him doing it. As soon as the ability ends, she goes to the backpack, grabs the bottle, and he asks why she's handing it over out of nowhere. She, a bit confused, responds that he seemed maybe thirsty. Caleb smiles. It seems her mind creates some kind of reason for her to perform that action, but he'll need to understand how this works in a fight, and the perfect chance appears with two goblins at the end of the corridor. He spends an action point to conjure a fireball and orders her to shoot an arrow at the goblin's leg in the back. The turn ends, and the fireball is finished first, and the arrow hits the thigh. The goblin falls to the ground. He already comes with the one in the face and takes another scorching hit. He then asks, Urinal, why did you decide to shoot the leg and not the head? To which she responds that in the position he was in, the leg seemed like an easier target. Then he's realizing that she really always invents an excuse and seems to obey very well. It will really be the perfect trump card for situations where he can't save himself. Or, for example, things that only a woman can do. What are you trying to say with that, man? He remembers, right, that she can't do anything against her personality. Yikes, I'm scared of this. Caleb now, he decides to test to see how it works. Ah, okay, he tells her to do a Bibion dance. Apparently, it must be, right, a dance from Korea, and obviously, she does nothing, just looks a bit confused. He then decides to test again and gives an order for her to do any kind of dance. She takes a step forward and starts doing who knows what kind of dance that is. The protagonist stares at her, and she realizes she's doing some nonsense. Then he walks away, realizing that, well, at least it worked, right? We continue through the corridors, and this boy is always wanting to activate this magic. Damn it, stop at this controlling hourglass, kid. But no, he's unstoppable. Activated it again and told her to say everything she knows about him before they entered the dungeon. She then comes, right, as natural as daylight and says, now that I remembered that on the boat you were talking about the reason you became a slave, it seems you killed someone. The protagonist chokes, wanting to know who he killed. She says she doesn't know exactly, but she imagined he would be much scarier. Good thing he's just a normal person. She's sure he must have had his reasons. He says yes, he had many reasons, while thinking that now he's screwed. Apparently, there's someone out there in the world who might not like him very much. She, however, continues delivering the information, saying it seems he killed someone from the fox race. Caleb remembers that foxes in this game are extremely intelligent, good at magic, and attractive enough to charm anyone. That's you? Man, don't try to project this furry preference onto the entire population. Urinal continues, saying she's sure that woman must have done something terrible for him to kill her. They just turn around and start walking, saying that a lot has happened. But, dude, not now. Shut up, turn the hourglass, and tell her to be quiet, for God's sake. She comments, so before you came here and became a slave, you were an explorer, right? In some city in the East. As far as I know, in every group of slaves, they always include someone with experience. You were probably that person in this group. The protagonist is starting to understand a bit about his past and why he ended up in this specific body. At that moment, as they turn the corner, they come face to face with the big exit gate. He's surprised, thinking he would find the exit, but this quickly. It's almost too lucky. Meanwhile, Urinal is off to the side and says she found someone. And look at that, by the face, it's the guy Abison, unconscious. Apparently, he's under the soul preservation magic, so it just looks like he's sleeping. By his face and hair, they are sure he was from a wealthy family. Caleb says that yes, that kind of magic is extremely expensive. While they are just ordinary slaves, Urinal is impressed. She had never seen this kind of resurrection or anything like it in front of her. Caleb then comments that maybe if they take the body, the family might give a good reward. The only problem is that, in this case, the guy is missing a leg. He then asks, do you hear any creature that sounds like it's chewing? She perks up her ears and immediately says yes, there's some disgusting sound. He asks about wings flapping, and she says no, there are no wings. Caleb is confused. If it were the black wasp, as the dwarf said, she should be hearing wings flapping. He then says they will have to take a look in the room where the sound is coming from. She heads to another side, saying they don't even have to go far. There, they find a black wasp egg. The protagonist is looking around, and a lone egg like this, something's off. If adventurers had really fought here, there should be some signs on the walls, but there's nothing. Just an egg in the middle of this room, and something doesn't smell right. Suddenly, his expression changes, and he asks if there have been cases where adventurers are disappearing in this labyrinth. Urinal stops to think and says there was a case of someone who attacks from behind, a guy who supposedly killed the black wasp alone while his entire team was killed. She wants to know why he's curious about this, while Caleb says he knew it. One of the biggest problems appeared for him, a thief, which is the hardest class for a mage to deal with. He then asks if she's ever heard of a possessed adventurer. She thinks and says no. He realizes that, indeed, it's something rare even in this world. Even he, who had cleared the ruins of this game countless times, had only seen a few cases of possessed adventurers. Basically, they are people whose souls were taken by the dungeon masters and serve this place. They have incurable madness, status, and the problem is that they can use all their old skills, but they are even stronger. Now it was explained why they found the exit so easily, without many monsters. Urinal asks if they're in trouble, and he realizes he's scaring her. That was the worst option. even though he was really a bit apprehensive. He then tells her to relax, that she has him around, so there's no danger at all. In the next chapter, we're at the bar, and Bertanen is saying he was telling the truth. "Oh man, stop my friend, you're telling me you found a guy who conjured 4 spells without saying a word all at once? That would be the genius of the century or something never seen before." Bertman says if he doesn't want to believe it, then don't, but he's telling the truth. To which the guy says, all right, when your legendary friend shows up, you come back here then. He throws the beer mug, and Bertanen says he hasn't even ordered yet, to which the bartender jokes, saying it's just like his friend, it's the silent conjuration. The dwarf gets angry and drinks, wanting to hit this bastard. A while later the guy at the bar asks, "And Zikal, how did he do?" Bertanen explains, "Oh, it wasn't that bad, his experience is okay, and his skills are good." The friend says it's obvious he's good, he was the one who introduced this person. With enough experience, he'll become the next backstabber, which is the name of the guy who, apparently, must be the possessed one. Bertanen says, for God's sake, if the backstabber is one of the most famous of all, poor Zikal can't compare to the guy who carried 2 people alone to the 2nd floor. It's just a shame that someone with that talent was captured right away by the dungeon master. While he's lamenting, suddenly someone arrives at the door calling for Bertanen, and here comes the worried mom. "Where's my son Abison? Is it true my boy died?" Bertanen turns, "It's true. Unfortunately, he went alone to find the exit and got bitten by the black wasp. So, I think it's over." The woman is shocked, asking if he's telling the truth. The poor thing faints, saying she asked him to take care of him. How could he die like that on this mission? The brother, however, tells the mother to calm down. He's still under the soul preservation magic. He then looks to the side and says, "Bertanen, listen, I know Abison's death isn't your fault, and I also know the Bertaven family wouldn't be foolish enough to let this end this way. You already had a rescue plan, right?" Bertanen just responds, "Relax, the soul preservation lasts a week, so it'll be easy to resurrect him. The scroll arrives in 2 or 3 days, and then we'll go after him." Wow, they're going to have to hunt the body in the dungeon? Yikes. The guy asks how, and Bertanen shows he's got one of his items, so it's just a matter of using the magic to track lost items. The platinum-haired guy asks how he got that, and Bertanen says a certain genius mage found it for him. The guy is curious, and the guy behind the bar says, "Yeah, it's the genius mage, the slave who conjures 4 spells in a second without saying a word." The crazy dwarf here believes this person exists. Apparently, no one believes it. The guy is already thinking, for God's sake, why would there be a slave with that level of talent? And he tells Bertanen to at least stop with these stupid jokes. The mother tells Clarence to think on the other side. If there's a genius mage, maybe he can help recover the body. To which Bertanen says it's possible. His group had 2 people. Clarence, however, turns and says, "Aha, a group with a slave and 2 people on that floor, clearly, they have no chance of saving them. Let's, for God's sake, put a reward for whoever recovers the body." While he's saying this, there's a crocodile with glowing eyes that immediately stands up and wants to know how much they'll pay. It's just the counterattacks. They operate on the 3rd floor. They're not clumsy like Bertanen's stupid group. But Clarence gave him a stare and told him to shut up, and the crocodile was shocked. He ran off right there to the rest of his group. "If you're so tough, go in there and save your own brother." He says that trying to solve things with money in this situation will only attract weird people. The mother, still, wants to know, right, so how are we going to solve this? "The boy will obey me, man." He says he'll go there himself with Bertanen's group. "I think I've got the hourglass activated here too." Bertanen says, "Well, if the mage from the 5th floor goes with us, it'll be easy." Clarence just responds that of course he's going to bring his brother. And besides, he's curious to know who this genius wizard is. Poor Caleb, he hasn't even left the labyrinth and is already being sought after. Also, Big Mouth, annoying dwarf, man, stop talking about him to everyone. Back with the Instagram famous guy, he tells Urinal not to give up. She asks what he's talking about. He says, "I know, we have to wait for the dwarf's group, but as long as we have this larva, which will die in a couple of days from hunger, we're fine." That's because she's the child of the floor leader, so any other monster that smells her runs away immediately. The downside is that the second she dies, everyone will notice and start moving. She then asks if they shouldn't just head to the next exit, but he says it will be impossible. If this backstabber guy is really free, killing everyone, it's impossible for them. The best plan in Caleb's mind was for the 2 of them to find this guy and manage to attack him. It will be difficult, even though they aren't weak. Urinal, however, is insecure, asking if they really have any chance of defeating this guy, who is considered one of the best. He says yes, there's a way, although it will be quite difficult. The brave one, excited, says it doesn't matter what it is, she'll do her best. He says alright then, but the strategy is going to be a bit intense. Sometime later, explosions are happening. The goblins are all in shock, electrocuted, shot in the head. Caleb says they're going to go through hellish training from now on. The first goal was to kill at least 100 goblins. With that, they charge forward, arrows, fireballs, electrocuted, the poor creatures, all getting beaten. That dishonest formation, on the little creatures of the first floor that have no chance at all. Since 5 is the limit on this floor, and 4 is what they reached after killing the boss, they just need to farm to reach the maximum. That's because this level 5 has the potential to unlock one more skill. Besides, they'll collect as many magic stones as possible. With that, he tells Urnil that now they're going to hunt the goblin shaman. He's the only creature on this floor that drops some scrolls. And the boy doesn't stop. He wants to farm in a hurry. It's already night, with the poor girl exhausted on the ground. Caleb, however, is happy that all the preparations are done, while Urnil says she feels like that larva, getting weaker and weaker. He reveals that yes, the situation, in this case, is also dangerous because she'll soon die, as she hasn't eaten in 2 days. She says they have the option to give the abyssum for the creature to eat, right? That way, it will last longer. To which he responds that it would be madness. Giving a preserved body with that ability for a creature to eat, it was one of the biggest crimes. Besides, they fortunately got all the items they need. Urnil sees the orc barrel full of water, imagines that, right, it must be part of his plan. He says yes, everything is almost ready. Now let's rest, because soon we'll make a little mess. He lies down saying that alright, then he's going to sleep first. And she comes close, which he doesn't know, right? Why does the bastard always sleep first? There must be some reason, because he keeps thinking there, right, that he has to sleep to level up, both of them, and besides, make the plans. The faster he sleeps, the stronger they get, so it's the most important thing. He says he'll let her sleep an extra 30 minutes, and with that, she gets all happy, saying, alright then. She turns, telling him to sleep soon, and he says to wake up in 2.5 hours. Once again, in the state of rest, both at level 4 to 5, and now you can choose a new special skill. In the next chapter, they stand at the door, and Nil says, hey Caleb, I'm not doubting you, but do you really want to face the boss like this? He simply replies, don't doubt me, what you see isn't all there is. Wow, getting philosophical. She's a bit skeptical, especially since he's got the creature's shell around him, and it seems to be stinking because it's spoiled. However, he tells her to trust him, saying that this wasp egg shell is extremely tough, and the creature is now a pet. The poor thing is like, please, give me back. The door opens, the trio enters, and wow, there's a throne with a guy with red hair sitting on it. Caleb doesn't care. He pulls out 2 wands and challenges the guy to come at him, but this one seems like a real final boss. In the blink of an eye, he's already behind the trio. Whoa, here comes the dagger, but what he doesn't expect is that the turn is activated. Caleb is startled, I can't even see, but if he disappeared from in front of us, he must have used the ambush jump ability and is behind us. Good thing I anticipated this standard move and was already aiming backward. First, I need to hit him with a quadruple lightning attack. At the same time he gives this order, he tells Urnil that if this guy collapses from the shock, she should throw water on him. With that, all possible actions, including the 4 points in her action, are used, and time unlocks. The boss takes the lightning sequence. Urnil grabs a bucket and throws it on him. The monster is confused, and Caleb knows that now that he's afflicted by the wet state, it's time for a counterattack. He sends an ice spike, but the boss seems to dodge using the shadow jump. However, the protagonist knows that this guy must have used all his movement ability cooldowns. He tells Urnil, I'm going to lift the barrel, you shoot it with an arrow. She obeys immediately. The arrow hits perfectly, splashing water all over the room, and once again, he activates the ice spike. The entire floor of the room freezes, and the boss is just staring in anger. Caleb wants to know what this guy is going to try now. The only abilities that can get him out of this situation are careful steps or wall walking. Wow. But he got distracted because something hits him square in the chest and shatters the eggshell. At least he's just thrown back and tells Urnil he's fine. He just lost the armor. However, he's shocked that the guy used the throwing ability from that distance and caused that damage. His luck is that both the distance and the eggshell ensured his survival, but the boss used another ability to pull the dagger back to his hand and starts disappearing. Caleb calls for Urnil and tells her to locate him with an arrow. She activates her keen hearing, hears him stepping on the wall above, and shoots an arrow in that direction. The boss, in the middle of his movement, notices the arrow coming and manages to defend himself, but his invisibility is cut. From above, staring at the two, he goes to pull a grenade from his back. The problem for Caleb is that the hourglass was still on cooldown. Yikes, there were still 15 seconds to use it. But the guy is laughing, saying this was the moment he was waiting for. The crazy guy threw an ice spike at the wasp baby there. He had leveled up just to create this opportunity. That's because he received the Killing Frenzy ability, and with that, he activates the hourglass. The ability he received restores 2 action points when he defeats an enemy. Obviously, the ability also has a cooldown and can only be used once per fight, but having kept that creature by his side created the perfect opportunity, as the guy is now suspended in midair. Aiming, he knows he has to hit a ping pong ball 10 meters high, mid-flight, which isn't easy. Since electricity is a more precise point, he decides to go with it, and with that, the points run out. 2 bolts of lightning shoot from his hand, one hitting the grenade in the boss's hand, exploding everything in midair. Caleb smiles, saying it's no wonder he was a sharpshooter in the army. He then asks for the location again from Urinal, and the second she points, he sends another ice spear. Man, this one hits the boss square in the chest, who is now frozen solid. Caleb knows that at least now, with the frozen effect, it's impossible for him to dodge. He tells Urinal to take the shot. A poison arrow flies in the direction and wow, it seems to have hit the boss in the chest. Caleb is celebrating, saying that no matter the distance, this is the end for this creature. That's because even if the poison doesn't enter the bloodstream, just by breathing, the boss will absorb enough. Yeah, Caleb, but one thing I know in life, when you celebrate, your plan usually goes wrong. The boss fell, he knows this creature will take 20 damage per second for 20 seconds. Even if you can't see the HP bar, this will end soon. But he talked too much, and the expression changed. Suddenly, there's a red light happening in the smoke. He tells Urinal that it's time for Plan B, the situation he hoped they wouldn't encounter, and also the reason why adventurers possessed in the labyrinth are so dangerous. The fact that, in some situations, they can even use the special abilities they had when they were people. The good part for Caleb is that he already expected this to happen and came up with a Plan B. We hear a conversation they had a little earlier, and the poor wasp baby in the background, watching everything, already knew it was going to die. Caleb said, "It's just for you to shoot a poison arrow and watch what happens." Confused, she found it strange, right? Especially since using both would give them more chances. But the protagonist responds, "They said this guy defeated the black wasp alone, and I find that odd. The only way he could do something like that is if he had some way to neutralize the poison. That's because, even though his class was a bandit and he was agile, it was hard to fight against the wasp. How do you avoid a single drop of poison to not die?" To me, a more realistic scenario is that he was poisoned but didn't die. Urinal asks, "Wait, are you saying he has a healing ability that removes poison?" He says, "I don't know if it's exactly magic healing, but he has some way to remove the poison with some item, maybe. One thing is certain, we have to confirm if he can detoxify. That was the main priority." Urinal is scared, right? Like, if he can detoxify, it's the end for us. But Caleb smiles and says no. That's when Plan B starts. Back in the fight, the boss continues to expand the aura, activating the adrenaline surge. It restores HP, resets cooldowns, and even removes any negative status. And right at that moment, here he comes again, with quick steps, approaching the protagonist. Yikes. The worst part is that there are still 3 seconds left for the hourglass. Urinal asks if she should shoot, but he says not yet. Now that he has the movement ability activated, he'll dodge easily. For Plan B to work, the protagonist needs to create distance between him and Urinal. He slides on the ice, while sending a bolt of lightning towards the boss. But the monster steps to the right, dodges, and continues approaching, grabbing Caleb's arm, managing to grab his hand and break it instantly, making him drop the wand. Man, it's bad for our guy. He's on the ground. The stab is coming. He calls for Urinal, who then shoots an arrow. The boss is forced to move to the side, using that shadow ability, but along with it, he took Caleb. Oh man, at this moment he's about to say Plan B, but an attack comes right at his stomach. But hold on, Urinal is screaming, "But I didn't see a drop of blood." Wait, just because I said it, I saw it. Man, he's pierced. The boy. At that moment, he pulls out one of the potions he got from the dwarf, but the damn bandit rubbed in his pocket to steal one too. At the same moment, the potion falls to the ground and the boss is already face to face again. But this potion taking gave enough time for the hourglass to activate. The stab was almost at his chest, and Caleb says, "Thanks, fool, for falling for my bluff." Urinal is far away and he says that Plan B is in play. From the beginning, he wanted to tank these attacks using the potion. This means that the next stab won't kill him. Drinking the potion and fiddling with the scroll already used 2 points. He tore the scroll, not sure doing what, leaving only 1 point left and, at the same time, told Urinal to shoot the bastard. Caleb smiles in the last second, saying that now the miserable one will have to say goodbye. The last point is spent, time resumes, while the protagonist has the potion in his mouth, a stab coming to his chest, and the boss confused. He activated a magical armor that gave the fool a big hug, saying that now he won't get out of there. The magical armor scroll protects against physical attacks and nullifies up to 100 damage or 5 attacks. The boss already tried to stab him twice, but there's an arrow that comes straight and hits his rib, while Caleb asks what it feels like to be hit by the second one. Finally, the real battle was about to begin, but up there everything is taken by the poison. Urinal is like us, right, wanting to know if Caleb is well trapped there. Yikes. Both were poisoned and Caleb realizes that his lung was being destroyed by the poison. However, the advantage is that he has the potion in his mouth, so he just needs to keep the boss nearby. But the damn guy, while pushing his shoulder, is coming to stab him again from the side. The rib is going to bleed too, but then the knife falls to the ground and the boss lets go of the protagonist, falling to his knees. However, he's losing consciousness too, and falls to his knees. At that moment, Urinal comes running, confused, wanting to know why he made this plan if they both had across the gate. Apparently, Caleb is conscious but can't move, thinking that even drinking the potion constantly, it still hurt like hell. In the end, it was a risky bet. He thought the potions would be enough to end the poison's effect, but it seems he's not so confident anymore. While Urinal tells him to drink another one. I don't know what happened, but some time passed and the portal opened behind them. Yeah, it seems it worked, because he gets up, saying he can finally breathe. He even praises her, saying that twice in a row she hit a perfect shot. She's all awkward, saying she was insecure, while Caleb thinks her aim is really good. Every shot in this world has a precision reduction when fired from a lower ground. However, the protagonist already knew that Guy would use the Shadow Step to do that, and that's why he gave Urinal the curve artillery ability. As long as the target is identified, the projectiles will ignore any obstacle, curve, and hit the target. The droopy-eared one keeps crying, saying she was worried, while he says they have more to resolve before leaving there quickly. Finally, let's get out of this cave, folks. I want to see the world outside. And what the protagonist is going to do is that now 4 people can leave. He's going to take the bodies of those guys. Next chapter, we're at the Swamp Bucket Rat Tavern. Someone holding a mug wants to know what brings someone to drink there at this hour. Bertanen looks to the side, wanting to know if the person is there to check out the scroll. It's Clarence, saying his brother's life is at stake, so he has to personally verify everything. Bertanen says, "Don't worry, the scroll will arrive today, then we'll enter the labyrinth at 5 in the morning. Clarence, however, is leaning there, knowing that the soul preservation scroll is almost at its limit. If they fail to rescue her, even with another scroll, resurrection becomes impossible. Wow, I thought it was a man, but apparently, it's a woman our protagonist saved. And right at that moment, someone is opening the door, calling for everyone. It's Emma, saying she brought the resurrection scroll. Yeah, in theory, it's time for them to head to the labyrinth.